Hi, I'm Aideen T. Finnola. I am a life coach, a public speaker, and an author of my memoir, which is called My Exquisite Purple Life, Insights from a Woman Who Never Should Have Made It But Did. And today I want to share with you guys this story of how I ended up being a life coach, because this is not my first career. I started out of university with my first degree in secondary education, and I've taught at the high school level and I've taught at the college level. In my middle 30s, I ended up being an interior designer for about 10 years. And then I decided I wanted to write my life story. I have had a pretty interesting, fascinating life. I was raised in a religious cult, and my parents were very abusive. And then I ended up in an abusive marriage to a closeted gay man. So I do have some pretty fascinating stories with my life story. And what was more important to me when I wanted to write my book was I wanted to share my insights. And that's why the subtitle is Insights from a Woman Who Never Should Have Made It But Did, because I've really struggled. The abuse that I suffered, the difficult marriage that I was in, the lie of all of that, trying to have a relationship with someone who is not attracted to women when I am a woman, and then I don't know what's going on. That was all very, very difficult. It was very tricky, and it caused me a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And so I ended up being in my middle 30s. I was in a really, really nasty place, and I was a pack-a-day smoker, and I was very overweight. I was a very heavy drinker, drank ridiculous amounts of coffee. I was on a very high dose of antidepressants because I was very suicidal. So I had gone through a significant battlefield, and I wanted to be able to share everything that I learned when I pulled myself out of that. So that was my motivation for writing my book. And then I loved teaching so much. And I wanted to be able to continue teaching, but I wasn't really liking grading papers anymore. And I wasn't really liking being in the structure of the classroom and being in the structure of working under administrators and everything like that. And so I realized, oh, hey, I could transition into public speaking, and I can share my own message, and I can share what I have learned, my own curriculum, right? My own lessons, instead of teaching history or the, space planning, which is what I was teaching when I was teaching interior design at the college level. I was like, oh, I can teach my lessons that I've learned. And so I'll write my own book, which will be like the textbook. And then I'm going to move into public speaking so that I can continue to teach people. I continue to be a teacher, but not have to have it be, restricted to just the classroom. So I did that and made that transition. And like so many life coaches, I really have been coaching for a very, very long time. I'm going to say at least over a decade. But the funny thing is I just never called it coaching, and I was not making that my job. I wasn't earning any money at it. But I was, for the longest time, and I still am, I was the go-to person with my friends and my colleagues for when they wanted to get perspective on something, get advice, input, that kind of thing. I was that person. So because I was that person, my best friend started telling me, oh my gosh, probably a decade ago, she started saying to me, you should really be a life coach. And I was like, no. And my roadblock to it, my mental block to it, came from the fact that I was raised in a religious cult. And as you would expect, being raised in a religious cult, we had so much of our lives dictated to us. And the leaders of the cult, they didn't give advice. They mandated how we were to dress, how we were to talk to each other, where we were to live, who we could interact with, who we could be friends with. We did not date. You want all those gory details, get into my book, it's in there. So I grew up in this environment with these leaders that were very dictator-like. And the last thing that I wanted to do was to be giving anybody advice in like a professional capacity. And even when I would give advice to my friends or my colleagues, I was always really hesitant, like, okay, so this is what I think, but you do whatever you want. I don't want to tell you what to do, just because I have that background, and I just know that's not a good dynamic no matter what. That's a bad thing. Bad. So I didn't want to do this. So my best friend keeps telling me you should be a life coach. I'm like, no, not gonna do that. No. And she just kept being insistent. And one day, I don't know, this was quite a few years ago, we were out to lunch, and I said to her, I need to understand from you more. Why do you think that I should be a life coach? Because I'm just not feeling it, but you keep saying it and whatever. And she got super emphatic with me, and she leaned across the table and slammed her hands down on the table, and she goes, I don't know what your problem is. You need to be a life coach. You just need to do this. I don't know why you keep saying you're not going to do this. And she said to me, she goes, Aideen, I have never once come to you with a problem that you have not solved, and solved in a way that I never would have considered. And you've given me perspective, and you've given me insight that I never would have had on my own. She said, you've got to be doing this. So you know how we always say, like, oh, if I could only get a sign, what am I supposed to do? If the universe would give me a sign. Well, I decided that I wasn't going to miss that sign, with my best friend screaming at me across the table in this restaurant, telling me I needed to be a life coach. And yet I still had this struggle, right? Like, I didn't want to be in this position of authority. And I'm not trying to say that life coaches are domineering or anything like that. These are my issues, right? Like, so I had this sensitivity. I just was really, really cautious about that. So I started to look for life coach training programs, because although that's not required, it was something that was important to me. When I wanted to become a teacher, I went and got a teaching degree. When I wanted to become an interior designer, I went and got an interior design degree. And so I thought, you know what? I want to be a life coach. And there's no degrees you can get in life coaching, but you certainly can get training. So I started looking around at different training programs, and I came across the Martha Beck Life Coach Training Program. And it was the perfect fit for me, because the foundation of the Martha Beck Life Coach Training system is, there are two key components to it. I mean, it's really quite involved, complex, whatever. I don't want to make it sound like it's complicated, but it's a very rich life coach training program. But the core elements and foundations has to do with intuition and how to use intuition through coaching. And then also a profound respect for each individual person being the authority and the sole source of truth for their own lives. So this made me feel so much better. And one of the very first things that I learned in my life coach training program through Martha Beck was how to use a particular phrasing. And so I should tell you guys, I am an empath, and I was born an empath. And so I really do rely on my intuition when I'm working with my clients, and it's a real help. And there was a lot of training in the Martha Beck program that helped me to really dial into my intuition, and how do I use my intuition with my clients to, like a flashlight, right? So they come to me because they are wanting to make a change in their lives, and they have tried, and they're stumbling, and it's just not working. And so my intuition becomes like a flashlight for me to be able to shine it and say, I think this might be where you're stumbling. I think there's something here that you're not aware of. So it's a really helpful tool. But I never want to be the one who says, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is what's going on, and this is what you need to change. So I will say to my clients, I have a hunch that, and fill in the blank, whatever it is, whatever ideas or insights I'm getting based on what they're sharing with me. And then I will immediately follow it up by saying, and tell me where I'm wrong. Because I assume that I can be and I will be wrong. Why? Not because I suck as a life coach, but because My client is the ultimate authority and the greatest source of truth for their own lives. And so I have the flashlight. They're coming to me. I mean, I do have incredible insight, and it is really, my intuition is really such a huge benefit to my clients. But it helps me to feel a lot better when I can continually turn that authority back over to them and to say to them, tell me where I'm wrong. And sometimes they do tell me where I'm wrong because I'm not always right. And so it's just a wonderful, wonderful tool. And so that's why, for me, the Martha Beck Life Coach training was so important and has been such a wonderful thing for me as a life coach. And I have taken what I've learned in that training and just evolved it and developed it and brought my own intuition and my own gifts to my clients and my own area of expertise as a survivor of abuse, of physical abuse, emotional abuse, religious abuse, spiritual abuse, etc. All the rest of it is mental abuse as well. That was the one I was trying to think of. Anyway, so that's my backstory. That's how I ended up being a life coach. I love what I do more than anything. It is such a treat and an honor and a delight for me when I can work with my clients and I can bring to them and offer to them the gifts of my intuition and the gifts of my insight so that they can empower themselves to move themselves forward and reclaim their lives. So if that is something that resonates with you, I would be thrilled to connect with you. Head over to my website, aideentfinnola.com. Learn more about the work that I do. See if we're a good fit for life coaching. And I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time. Bye.